The 2023 wide receiver class gave us Puka Nacua, Dell, Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, and a bunch more potential budding stars. We discussed the fantasy outlook on second-year wide receivers on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, but I'm not doing this. I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network. Vinny is still on vacation, but I have an amazing guest today. It's Marcus Mosher, the co-host of the Locked On Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast, and also the host of Locked On Cowboys. He's one of the smart guys I know for football knowledge, for fantasy knowledge. I'm so excited to have him on the show today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I know we're all so excited about this rookie class, right? Especially the wide receivers. There's going to be some great guys, but let's not forget about the second-year wide receivers. A lot of great ones that gave us a lot of good fantasy options last year. Let's start at the top with the big names. Puka Nacua, Dell, Rashee Rice. All very good rookie seasons. Obviously, Puka broke out for the record. Now, on Monday, Kate and I discussed Puka Nacua and where we see him going in 2024. I'm a little bit lower on him than Kate is. I see more wide receiver 10. She thinks he could be a top 5 wide receiver. Marcus, how are you feeling about Puka? Do you think he even gets better in his second year?
I don't know if you can really get all that much better considering how productive he was last season, but I think it's very fair to expect similar production. I mean, he's going to be year 2 in the system. We're assuming that Matt Stafford is going to be healthier than he was even a year ago. And I just really trust Sean McVay to figure these things out and to make him a productive receiver. So, yeah, I think he's probably, I'm going to split the baby a little bit, like probably wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7 in that range. But yeah, I think he's going to be in for another monster season. The only question I have is what's the ceiling if Cooper Kupp stays healthy, because I still think Cooper Kupp is going to get his. And it was just so clear down the stretch last year that Cooper Kupp wasn't healthy, but Cooper Kupp hasn't been healthy for multiple years now. So can we expect him to stay healthy for an entire 17 game schedule? I don't think so. But yeah, I think it's Cooper Kupp is so easily the best second year receiver in this class. And I'm not sure it's all that close.
Yeah, and this is my thing with Puka, right? He has 160 targets last year, and so many came in the beginning of the season. I mean, he had games of 20 targets, 15 targets immediately as he enters the NFL because Cooper Kupp had to miss those first 4 games. Even in week 5, had a ton of targets, but then those really started to dwindle down, especially in the middle of the season when Cooper Kupp was at his healthiest. That's my worry, but like you said, Cooper Kupp hasn't been able to stay healthy for a while now, so it's going to be hard to push him down for that reason.
I want to ask you a quick question because Tyler Higbee is probably going to be on the PUP list, likely to miss the first 6 or so games of the season. Does that have any impact on you? Because I do think there's a chance that they just funnel this offense through Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and together those two are getting 25 targets a game.
Yeah, honestly, it's probably a good thing. Like, I never like it when the Rams are targeting Tyler Higbee. I just feel like it's a waste, right? So maybe this brings up Demarcus Robinson. Maybe he can get more targets. But yeah, that is a good point. Maybe there's just more to go around to both Puka and Cooper. And this is really what this offense is. It goes to these two guys. So they both can be good for fantasy. It's not just because Cooper Kupp stays healthy that it means that Puka is going to have a bad year. I just find it hard to say he's going to have a better year than last year, 1,486 yards. Maybe the touchdowns is where he can improve. He only had 6 on 160 targets. That should increase. Also have to worry about Matthew Stafford staying healthy as well, which he's had trouble doing. Moving on to, listen, I love Tank Dell, all right? And I was planning on doing this episode yesterday and talking up Tank Dell to no other. I was ready. And then Stephon Diggs gets traded to the Texans, which kind of hurts my boy, right? Because I don't know how CJ Stroud is going to feed Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell and give them all consistently good fantasy weeks. It's just not possible. Where do you see the landscape of this Texans offense? And who do you think will lead in targets among these wide receivers?
Well, I want to ask you a question first. With the addition of Diggs, who do you think's whose value do you think takes the biggest hit? Is it Nico? Is it Tank Dell? Or is it like somebody like Dalton Schultz?
Honestly, I think it's all of them, even
Yeah,
Diggs, because I think they're all going to be heavily involved. They're all going to have over their 100 targets. They're all going to have massive games. Like 150-yard games is probably going to happen to all of them, but figuring out who it's going to be in any given week, that's what I'm nervous about.
I agree with you. Now, the reason why I'm not super concerned about Tank Dell is I think his role is pretty well defined in this offense. Like, I don't think he was ever going to be the guy that was getting 8 to 10 targets a game. Like, his value is stretching the field, making plays down the field. And I don't think Diggs changes that. I don't think Diggs has been that player for a while. And Nico is really good, but he's not really that player either. So I think the floor is a little bit lower just because there might be 1 or 2 fewer targets for Tank, but I'm still buying. I still see Tank Dell having a huge season. And if you look at last year, Michelle, when Tank Dell and Nico Collins were playing together and they were both healthy with CJ Stroud, Tank Dell outproduced him. He was the
Yeah.
more efficient and more effective receiver going into year 2. I'm still buying Tank Dell.
So listen, Tank, me too. And I hope his costs, goes down after this move for Diggs, and it should. But Tank Dell played 9 games last year with
Yeah.
30 plus snaps, which is a very reasonable number of snaps for him to get. He's going to get more than that anytime he's healthy. He averaged 17.4 points per game in those 9 games. That's the same exact amount as Puka Nacua averaged
Pretty
last
good.
year. And the only bad games from those games were his first game in the NFL, week 1, the week 4 where he got injured, but he did play the majority of the game. And then week 8, the first game back from injury. Those were his only bad games that he actually played in. And all the rest were such good fantasy weeks. So yeah, I am still high in Tank Dell. It's just the ceiling with Stephon Diggs. I don't think he has that ceiling to get all the targets we would like from him. Rashee Rice. This is the other third top guy here. I know he's dealing with some legal troubles, but let's just say he plays the full year. He doesn't get suspended this year, whatever. Do you think Hollywood Brown joining the Chiefs, does that hurt him or help him?
Oh, I think it helps him. Anybody that's been a longtime listener of the LockedOn Dynasty podcast knows how much I love Rashee Rice. I have him as a top 12 dynasty receiver right now. All I think this does is open up more of the middle of the field for Rashee Rice. I don't see his role changing at all. He is the short to intermediate yards after catch receiver. That's his game is based on volume. Where I think Hollywood, where he's going to help, is on like the deep over routes and using him in motion just to kind of free up the defense a little or make them have to focus on his speed. I think what we saw from Rashee Rice in the second half of the season and then through the playoffs was somebody that can handle 10 to 12 targets a game, convert key third downs, move the chains, make plays after the catch. I think his trust or his role in the offense is only going to grow because Patrick Mahomes clearly trusts him more than any other receiver not named Travis Kelce. I'm buying. I think there's a good chance, Michelle, that he is, 10 targets a game. He leads this team in touchdown receptions, and maybe we see him be even more efficient down the field.
Yeah, we'll need to see his average depth of target definitely increase because I was a little bit nervous with the way they're using him in the second half of the year, but it was nice to see his offensive snaps increase. This team clearly started to trust and believe in him, get him on the field more because he really wasn't on the field all that much in the first half of the season. Second half, he played most games over 40 snaps, and that's where he really started to shine. From week 7 through 17, average over 16 fantasy points per game, much more involved. And yeah, Hollywood Brown there doesn't scare me off.
I think it helps. I really do.
Yeah, he can open up things.
Because he's not going to get 9 to 10 targets a game. He's going to basically be he's going to be in the Marquez Valdez-Scantling role. I think he's going to be more efficient, but he's not going to be a target hog, and that's perfectly fine for Rashee Rice.
Yeah. Now, who do you think has the better fantasy season, Tank Dell or Rashee Rice?
Oh, I would go Rashee Rice. I just think there's fewer mouths to feed in that offense. I really like the role. And I also think we saw in the second half of the season, like that's who Patrick Mahomes was trusting in the red zone. Like that was kind of his preferred target. It's also not a coincidence. The offense for Kansas City got a lot better when Rashee Rice started to play more. So for me, it's Rice pretty comfortably.
Interestingly enough, in this first segment here, talking about the top guys, none of them were the first round wide receivers drafted last year. Now they fall into the second tier, right? They have a lot of upside. Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Not so much Quentin Johnson. We will hit on him in later show. I want to hear your thoughts on him. But we'll hop into those guys because I want to know, are they going to break out, right? And I have a feeling one of them has a super, super high ceiling. We'll get into that in just a moment. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC members SIPC is a registered broker dealer. Zay Flowers, Jaden Reed, Jackson Smith-Njigba, right? These guys, all first round draft picks. They all landed in spots. Well, I should say Addison and JSN landed in spots with a lot of competition, right? Zay Flowers had his role as wide receiver 1. All of them kind of meh to me. And I will say who has the most upside. I do think it's Zay Flowers, right? In this offense with Lamar Jackson. He is the wide receiver 1. And I do think he showed the most flashes among this group. Would you agree with me with that statement? Or would you go with one of the others for the most upside?
No, I obviously I think it's Zay Flowers. He's playing with the best quarterback of the 3, and he's clearly the top receiver on his offense, where Jordan Addison's playing with Justin Jefferson, Jackson Smith-Njigba is playing behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. It's Zay Flowers. It's just how many targets can Zay Flowers get in a game, and can he be more effective down the field? I think the answer is that he can be more effective, and I do think he can handle more targets. I thought we saw at times last year him be the most dynamic receiver on the field for Baltimore. And he was a big weapon, even in the playoff game, which is a little bit up and down against the Chiefs. You saw him score a touchdown. He was 1 inch away from scoring another touchdown. He was getting open. He was making plays down the field. I'm very bullish on Zay Flowers. Now, I do think the Ravens are going to bring in somebody else, because it's not just going to be him and Rashad Bateman running every route. They're going to bring in some veteran, or they're going to draft somebody. But of these 3, I think Flowers has the highest ceiling and the highest floor.
I agree. And towards the end of the year, we really started to see him shine, right? Last 4 games, 72 yards, a touchdown, 106 yards and a touchdown, 115 yards and a touchdown. Only 1 bad game in that span of with 4 and 41 yards. But we really did start to see him open, really start to shine there at the end of the year. And he just is in the best position to be able to get those targets, right? Because when you look at JSN, he's still stuck with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. We were kind of hoping maybe they'd move on from Tyler Lockett. It's not happening. Do you think Jackson Smith-Njigba gets more of a workload this year? Because it was really hard for him to earn those targets last season. It's just hard when you have 2 really good wide receivers playing with you.
I mean, I do. I think we're going to see him have an increased role. And we did see it a little bit down the stretch last season, but he's still on an offense with 3 really good receivers on a team that probably wants to still be pretty
play
balanced. Play defense. And now with Mike McDonald, their new head coach, I've got a feeling he's going to want to lean into being a balanced offense. So I love JSN's talent. I think he's a really good fit in the slot there. I think he's going to be efficient. I just don't see a path to him being a top 24 receiver unless there's an injury or the Seahawks move on from one of their top 2 guys.
Yeah, you're going to need an injury to one of these guys. He
Mhm.
had one game with more than 7 targets last year and only a few games with the 7 targets. Most games were 5 targets or under. That's not enough for fantasy to make him a consistent fantasy value or asset. So at most, I see him as a wide receiver 3 type option. And I don't think it's going to feel good to have him on your roster unless one of those guys were to go down and then he'll get an opportunity. But like you brought up with Mike McDonald, with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, he's going to want to run that ball, I think, a
And they
lot
should.
and focus
They
on the
should.
defense. Yeah. So you have Geno Smith at quarterback, and I know he's better than what he was with the Jets,
Mhm.
and he's gotten better, but he's still Geno Smith. You don't want him throwing the ball 600 times. Like, you
Nope.
just don't. So they're going to focus on the run, and there's just not going to be enough to go around. With Jordan Addison, we did see like some really good games in there. He had his opportunity without Justin Jefferson. He didn't really take it. I didn't think it's not like he really shined as a wide receiver 1, but I think it's good for him that he has Jefferson there. And it's really Jefferson and Addison, especially to start the year, right? Because TJ Hawkinson
Yes.
is going to probably miss a good chunk of time there coming back from his knee injury. But who's the quarterback? Like, this is the issue. Let's say they move up for JJ McCarthy or one of these rookie quarterbacks. Can they support Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and then also Hawkinson when he gets back?
I feel really conflicted on Jordan Addison, and I wish I had a really good answer, a smart answer to give you because I think he's a really good player. And we saw that especially early in the season. Like he was making big plays down the field pretty consistently early in the year. But I just don't know what to think about this offense without Kirk Cousins because no matter who they get, it's going to be a downgrade from Kirk Cousins. I would like them, like if I'm in a dynasty league or you're doing your underdog drafts right now, like I I would like them to just stick with Sam Darnold for a year because I think that's going to be an upgrade over like JJ McCarthy in year 1. You
Oof.
mentioned the TJ Hawkinson injury. I mean, I don't see Hawkinson playing the first 6 games of the season, so that's an opportunity for Jordan Addison. I love Kevin O'Connell. I think he's one of the best play callers in the league. But can Sam Darnold really support a number 2 receiver in this offense? I don't know.
He can't even support a number 1.
I
No.
know. That's what's it's so hard about this. But I also trust, again, I trust Kevin O'Connell to figure this out because last year Jordan Addison was productive with Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs and Jaron Hall for a little bit. So I don't know. I'm kind of playing the wait and see game with Jordan Addison because I do think he's a very good player, but I have no idea how to value him right now.
I'm with you. I think I really liked Addison coming out of school. I think he's super talented. It's just an issue right now with who's the quarterback. And then, there's no ceiling to be the wide receiver 1 on his
No.
team because he's playing with the best wide receiver in the league. I'll say among this group, right? If you're comparing this group, actually it was a 2nd-year wide receiver that outscored all of them. And it's not Rashee Rice or Tank Dell or Puka, who was drafted later. It was Jaden Reed who outscored this group as well as those guys. So Jaden Reed, 2nd round pick for the Packers. He really started to come on in the second half of the season. Starting in week 10, I mean, 19 points, 15 points, 20, 17, 26, 15, a lot of great games in there. And he never really got consistent playing time where he was on the field a ton, where you felt like, okay, he's reaching his ceiling here with what he can do. I think next year he could really, become a starter, get out there, play the majority of the game, and we could see his fantasy value really skyrocket here next year.
That's my hope. I hope that Matt LaFleur just kind of finds his top 3 receivers and sticks with them. Sticks with them because last year they were just using just such a heavy rotation with Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Dobbs, and Luke Musgrave was playing some wide receiver snaps, and Tucker Kraft was, a second round tight end. And then there's Christian Watson, who was in and out of the lineup. I would just like to see them have somewhat of a consistent rotation because I agree with you. Like Jaden Reed's the best receiver on this team. Let him go be the number 1. Like make him the focal point of this passing attack and have everybody else be, complementary pieces. I'm just not confident that's going to happen. I think they really like the idea of having 5 or 6 guys that they can target equally. And that makes me a little bit nervous about Jaden Reed's week to week fantasy value.
I know. And it's not even just like the wide receivers. They like to spread it out too. Now you have Luke Musgrave and then also Tucker Kraft, who got his chance
Yep.
with Musgrave out. And I think he's proved his worth. So there really is and they're kind
And
of all
Josh
in the same.
Jacobs. Yep.
Yeah, they're kind of all in the same tier here where worthy of targets, but I do think Jayden Reed is the most worthy out of this group. I think he's the most dynamic and most special, and I would really like to see him be the front runner in this offense while still spreading it around. I think that's good for Jordan Love. But Jayden Reed is a guy I really, really like. I think I would rather have Jayden Reed on my fantasy teams than JSN next year. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I'm not even sure it's all
Pretty
that
easily.
close. Yeah,
What
I mean,
about Jayden Reed or Jordan Addison?
I probably would lean Addison, but that's close where I can make a good argument either way.
Okay, that's fair. We're going to get into some more deeper guys, right? Guys that you're going to be able to get in your double digit of your 2024 fantasy drafts that we think could really break out next year in their second season. We'll get to that to finish up our show. This episode of LockedOn Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Game Time app. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. I use the Game Time app all the time. Whenever I want to go to an Astros game, I just pop up onto the app and I know that I'm going to get the best price available and it's going to be super easy. You can rest assured that you will always get the best price with Game Time, because if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you with 110% of the difference. And they have your back, unlike some of these other ticketing platforms. Even if an event is canceled and not rescheduled, you will automatically receive a full refund for such event. You don't have to deal with any hassle. Also, they allow you to return your tickets within 24 hours from time of purchase for a full credit to your Game Time account with no questions asked. Take the guessing work out of buying tickets with Game Time. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account on the Game Time app and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Now, Marcus, it's pretty wild to say that, a former first round pick that was just picked last year is a sleeper in fantasy. But Quentin Johnston, you're going to be able to get him pretty late in your fantasy drafts unless all the hype starts to come around him this offseason. But does he have the capability to be a good NFL player and fantasy asset? He has the opportunity he needs right now. I mean, there's no one on this Chargers roster besides him and Josh Palmer, right? But so the target opportunities will be there, but is he good enough to handle that?
No. I don't think he's a very good fit in Jim Harbaugh's offense. They're going to use more tight ends than ever with Greg Roman running the offense now as the OC. Go look at Greg Roman's history. Like, the outside receivers just don't produce in this offense. Now, Greg Roman's really never had a quarterback like Justin Herbert, so maybe things will be differently, but I don't know where Quentin Johnston's going to play because he's not an X receiver, despite his body size looking like that. He's not a slot receiver, and he's not really a Z receiver either. He is a guy that you have to manufacture touches for, and I just don't necessarily see Greg Roman doing that. I think Josh Palmer is going to be one of the starting outside receivers, and then the Chargers are going to draft somebody either in the first or second round. I'm kind of all the way out on Quentin Johnston right now, even despite him being basically free in your fantasy leagues.
Yeah, because there's a really good shot that they take a wide receiver there with their number 5th overall pick. And if it's Neighbors or Dunze right off the bat, that knocks down Johnston to what? Wide receiver 3 already? Because we're still going to have Palmer over him and in an offense that we don't expect to throw as much as they typically do. I'm with
It's
you. I
not
just
fun.
can't.
It's
I
it's
know
it's a
we want to
bummer.
buy into it, and yeah, he just was that
Bummer.
bad last year. Now, who is a guy that you think can make a massive step up in year two that you're really excited about, that you think you can get as a steal in fantasy drafts for 2024?
I'm keeping an eye on Marvin Mims, who was the Broncos' first pick last year. Now, the Broncos did not have a lot of draft capital last year, and yet they traded up, and that was Sean Payton's first selection, was Marvin Mims. Didn't have a big rookie season, but every time Sean Payton talks about Marvin Mims, he talks about how, hey, it was our fault that we didn't get him more involved, that we made a mistake. We needed him to be a bigger part of our offense. And now with Jerry Jeudy gone, it just opens up more snaps for Marvin Mims. I think Cortland Sutton is probably on the last year of his deal with the Broncos. I wouldn't be surprised if they move on. The biggest question is, who's the quarterback?
Yeah.
Who's throwing the ball to Marvin Mims?
Because if it's Jared Stidham, I don't want
Yeah, if
anything to
it's
do with
Jared
Marvin Mims.
Stidham, I'm not that interested. However, I don't think it's going to be Jared Stidham. Like, I think they're going to figure this out, whether they go out and try to trade for a quarterback or whether they draft one early. Marvin Mims just hit so many or checked so many boxes in the pre-draft process last year. He has the second round draft capital. He's somebody that I'm keeping a close eye on because I really do like the talent.
So, yeah, as long as they can figure out the quarterback and it's not Jarrett Stidham, Marvin Mims is definitely interesting with all of his huge playmaking abilities. I wish they would have utilized him more last year. Like,
Yeah.
that was always confusing. They were struggling to find weapons, and you have a great one available to you, and they're like, nah, we wanted anyone else but him. That was weird to me, but hopefully he gets more opportunity this year. A guy I really like is Josh Downs from the Colts. Now, he was dealing with a knee injury pretty much all year long because in the offseason he dealt with a knee injury. He playing through it just fine from weeks 1 through 8, but leading up to week 9 in practice, he really aggravated that knee, and that it showed, right? Because weeks 2 through 8, he was averaging 13.3 fantasy points per game, over 60 receiving yards per game. Like, I thought he really showed some skill there, right? He was flashing. And then weeks 9 through 18, his receiving yards per game cut in half, 33 and 33.1 receiving yards per game, was doing nothing for fantasy. I think that knee was really bothering him, but he's in an offense that has Michael Pittman Jr. and really not anybody else in the passing game. And Anthony Richardson, of course, we have to see if he can develop as a passer more, but he's going to have to pass to more than just Pittman Jr. Now, maybe they add a Brock Bowers in the first round or add some wide receivers, but I still think Josh Downs is going to be the wide receiver too in this offense. And I think he could be a really sneaky value where he can be a really solid flex play in most given weeks with also really high upside as well that could be sitting in your flex.
Yeah. We should also mention that he was just a terrible fit with Gardner Minshew. Minshew is a quarterback that really relies a lot on play action and RPOs, and he throws over the middle of the field and not really to the perimeter. Josh Downs' game is making plays down the field with his speed and ball tracking ability. And that's why I'm so excited with him pairing with Anthony Richardson, because when we saw Richardson last year for the few games that we did, he was willing to throw the ball down the field. So Downs going into year 2, hopefully a whole lot healthier than he was at this time last year, and getting back with Anthony Richardson. And he's in year 2 of Shane Steichen's offense. I think it's all systems go for him.
Yeah, I really like him. He'll be on many of my fantasy teams. One more guy I have a question about because he will likely have the opportunity. It's Michael Wilson from the Cardinals. Obviously, we're expecting them to take a wide receiver in the first round with their 4th overall pick if they stay there. But still, they have nobody. I mean, they let go of Marquise Brown. They traded away Rondell Moore. So it's Michael Wilson right now. And we did see him have a career high receiving yard game in his very last game of the year, week 18, 95 receiving yards there. Had some other decent games throughout his rookie season. Is he a guy that can give solid low end wide receiver to fantasy value in his second year?
I know there are a lot of people in dynasty leagues that are big on Michael Wilson, but we at LockedOn Dynasty are not. One of the reasons is because of what you mentioned. Like, the Cardinals are going to draft a receiver in this draft, whether it's Marvin Harrison Jr. at pick number 4, or if they slide down a little bit and pick up a Rome Odunze or a Malik Neighbors. Like, they're leaving the top 10 with a wide receiver. They also have Trey McBride, who was a target hog down the stretch, who's currently the number 2 tight end in dynasty leagues right now. And then another name that I want to mention, Greg Dortch, who really performed well last year in the second half of the season. He is somebody who the Cardinals absolutely love in the slot. They brought him back on another deal this offseason. I think he's going to get a lot of attention as well. So if you have Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, Greg Dortch, and then Michael Wilson's kind of that other outside receiver, I think he's going to play a lot of snaps, but I don't think it's going to translate into week-to-week fantasy production.
And what would be so great for fantasy if it did, like, let's say they take Marvin Harrison Jr., if all the targets went to Harrison Jr. and to Trey McBride, that's what we would love for fantasy,
Yes.
right? Just going to those two guys, using James Conner as the running back. And I think Kyler Murray could really shine with those two weapons as well. And then getting the other guys obviously involved once in a while. But I'm with you. I'm not really interested in Michael Wilson come next year. It's really Josh Downs. Like, any interest in Jonathan Mingo coming into his second year? I know many people were excited about him as a rookie. I was not high on him coming out of school. Maybe he's better with Bryce Young second year.
We'll see, because I like the idea of him going back to the slot, which was his natural position at Ole Miss. When he got drafted last year, they decided to stick him on the outside and play Adam Thielen in the slot, which I have no idea why that was the plan. With Mingo going back in the slot with Deontay Johnson playing on the outside, I do think that opens up some better opportunities for Mingo, but we'll see. I need to see this offense with Bryce Young looking competent before I kind of buy into anybody here.
Yeah, that taste from last year is not sitting well with me. So it's really hard to figure out what the offense could look like this year if it does get better. That is it for today's show. Thank you so much to Marcus Mosher for joining us today. Make sure to go listen to his shows. You can go listen to him at the LockedOn Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast and Locked On Cowboys. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Everydayers, I'll be back tomorrow with a different guest, Rob Stats Guerrera, talking 49ers players and their 2024 fantasy outlook. It should be a fun one. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.